Hi, my name is Amelia Anderson. I am currently an occupational therapy assistant student at Bryant and Stratton College in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. I've created an educational video on energy conservation in the kitchen. The population that this video would be most appropriate for is anyone with decreased energy or who fatigues quickly. Patients with COPD, patients with generalized weakness, older adults, patients with any lung conditions, maybe like pneumonia, patients that are transitioning home from a long stay at the hospital, and patients that have just been generally deconditioned. Some safety concerns before starting this video is that anyone that is using the video should be able to identify when they're getting short of breath. Additionally, anyone using this video should not rush through activities and should instead work to pace themselves when in the kitchen. Improper body mechanics is another safety concern in the kitchen, with things like bending, reaching, twisting, because all of those things can lead to shortness of breath, as well as other safety concerns like hurting their back. If anyone watching the video has an ambulation device, this is another safety concern to watch for and ensure that it's being used properly. I'll discuss some proper usage of the common ambulation devices in a couple of minutes. Another important safety concern is having proper footwear. So shoes or grippy socks to reduce the risk of falls while in the kitchen. Additionally, be sure to limit any trip hazards, things like cords and throw rugs, to ensure safety while in the kitchen. Supplies needed for the video is obviously a kitchen, and then any supplies that are frequently used in the kitchen. And then, of course, any ambulation device if anyone watching uses one. A quick reminder, we would appreciate your feedback regarding implementation of this video. At the end, please take a few minutes to complete the brief survey using the link. If anyone watching needs to pause the video to gather the appropriate supplies, feel free to do so now. If anyone watching uses a rollator walker, this can be used for rest breaks while in the kitchen. Ensure that the brakes are locked anytime there is no walking happening. If there's a need to take a rest break, go ahead and sit on the seat once you've locked those brakes. When you're ready to continue with your task, feel free to get up and do so. If anyone watching uses a standard walker, make sure that this is only being used when walking. This should not be used to lean against or to rest against. That causes extreme instability and is very unsafe. I'll show you further along in the video how to take proper rest breaks if this is something that anyone watching uses for ambulation. When cooking, it's a great idea to gather all of the supplies prior to starting the cooking task. Things like the food ingredients, the utensils, pots and pans, oven mitts, and anything that would be needed while cooking. The supplies can be gathered right before the cooking task or even a few hours prior to starting that cooking task. So say someone was going to cook macaroni and cheese for lunch. Gathering those supplies that don't need to be refrigerated about mid-morning and leaving them on the counter until it was time to cook the meal would be a great option to conserve energy. Or gathering all of those same supplies immediately before cooking is a nice way to conserve energy as well. Either way, it eliminates the person from having to go back and forth throughout the entire task of cooking and helps conserve energy. So here I have all of my supplies gathered if I were to make cupcakes. The cake mix, the frosting, the oil, eggs, cupcake liners, cupcake pan, a bowl, and a spoon, as well as a knife for the frosting. So here I've gathered all of my supplies to bake these cupcakes. So then while I am actually baking, I don't have to go into the fridge, into the pantry, under cupboards, into the top to grab different pans. That way I've already gathered everything and it's ready to go. When looking at ways to conserve energy in the kitchen, placing frequently used objects on the counter and leaving them there is a great way to conserve energy. For everyone, these objects will be a little different, so it's up to the user to decide which objects would be most beneficial to leave out. Heavy pots and appliances are great to leave out because this will limit bending and heavy lifting. Heavy pots and/or pans can be left on the stove as well. Just always ensure the stove is turned off when not in use. Other great objects to store on the counter are mixers, microwaves, coffee pots, toaster ovens, anything that would be strenuous to continually pull out. One thing to keep in mind is to not overclutter the counters. If there's too much on the counters, this can become dangerous with the potential of objects falling off, as well as limit space for prepping food. Keep the objects out that are frequently used enough to where it would be beneficial to leave them out. As you can see here, I leave out a baking dish and a pan on my stove, as well as frequently used cooking utensils. These objects are things that I use frequently to cook in my kitchen. I also leave out my heavy mixer so I don't have to bend and lift that up. And also on the other side of the kitchen, I have my coffee pot out and my toaster oven because those as well are heavy objects that I want to limit from bending and reaching to grab frequently. To conserve energy in the kitchen, using electronic appliances whenever possible is best. Things like the microwave, toaster oven, mixer, food processor, all of these appliances will decrease the energy required to cook the food and does most of the work for the user. Here are a few examples of the electronic appliances I use. A food processor, blender, mixer, and the microwave. One big thing to think about with energy conservation is knowing when it's time to take a break and sit down. It's important to get those breaks in prior to getting fatigued. If the person cooking is doing the task and pushing through without paying attention to how they're feeling and not taking a rest until they're overly fatigued, this isn't conserving energy. It's a good idea to set up a rule to work through maybe 2 minutes and then take a 30-second rest break, or whatever time is appropriate for that individual, depending on their needs. However, it's important that those breaks are being taken prior to getting fatigued. So figuring out whatever numbers work best for the individual. Some warning signs that someone should sit down immediately are dizziness, tired legs, and shortness of breath. It's important to try and take rest breaks prior to any of these warning signs occurring, but ensure to take them immediately if these things do happen. Limit any bending, reaching, lifting, and twisting to help conserve energy while in the kitchen. Limit bending into cabinets because this constricts the diaphragm, which is a body part that's used during breathing and can cause shortness of breath. Reaching for heavy objects uses a lot of energy and can cause strain on other muscles as well. Lifting objects can also cause the body extra strain and requires more energy. Lastly, twisting the body can cause shortness of breath and, of course, requires more energy. Limiting these movements as much as possible will help with energy conservation in the kitchen. Sitting while cooking is a great way to conserve energy. Having a chair behind the person is always going to be beneficial, but be cognizant that the chair isn't a fall risk. You want to leave enough room to be able to move around the kitchen and have it accessible when it does need to be used. Here's an example of me sitting and cooking while next to the stove. I'm an appropriate amount of distance away from the stove, so I'm not too close to the flame while sitting. But I'm able to sit and conserve energy while cooking dinner. If anyone watching this video uses a rollator walker, remember the seat on it can be utilized for rest breaks. However, it can be a little difficult to do cooking from that seat because it's a little short. So it's okay to transfer into a countertop height chair. Lock those brakes, reach back for the chair, and go ahead and sit down. If anyone has a standard walker, it's essentially the same as utilizing a regular chair. You would just back up to that chair, sit back, and go ahead and prepare a meal or cook. This is the conclusion of my video. I hope anyone watching gained an educational benefit of energy conservation in the kitchen. Occupational therapy practitioners, please remember to take a few minutes at the end of the video and complete the brief survey using the link provided below. Thank you.